He had to show that moment, which was a moment of humiliation for me.
There has to always be this awareness that like you have room to do better.
Like we lost, we failed.
Yeah.
Being willing to admit what you don't know and what you know.
And they just feel so safe there that they're scared to step outside of that. But outside of the comfort zone is where magic happens.
But it's about reframing it
Yeah.
from failure. Like, losses are just lessons. And I think the goal is to learn the lesson as fast as you possibly can.
Necole bitchy from boss to broke. And I was just like, like I'm seeing all the commentary, and that was my moment. I'm gonna cry.
Don't cry. Take a deep breath.
It's crazy that I still cry because I felt the world. It was my worst fear to fail in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And I felt like the world was seeing me fail. And not only that, but I felt like people were cheering the failure because they were so mad that I took something away that was a part of their everyday life. Like, they enjoyed coming to the website every day, multiple times a day, and getting their news. So it's like, how dare you take this thing away from me that is a part of my culture, I guess. It was a cultural thing. And so I felt the world was parading the failure. And that's what gets me crying every time I talk about it.
Take a deep breath. Because your story and your journey, and as transparent as you've been, have helped so many, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel, looking back, that it actually was failure, or it's just the ebb and flow of running a business?
Well, a year later, the news came out that Will Packer had bought my website, and I just feel like if they didn't see the low moment, then it would have looked like I'm always winning. Like, she goes straight from one thing, oh, now this Hollywood producer has come along and bought her site. Yeah. It's easy for her. So looking back, I felt it was necessary to show a moment of, yes, you go through transitions. No, it won't be easy. Yeah. Like, it's literally, I think I heard Lauryn Hill talk about how we always want to climb a mountain and stay at the top of the mountain. But like, you can't get to the top of the next mountain without coming down off of one. And so it's like valleys and peaks. And so now I look back and say, it was meant for me to do that publicly. And like I always say, when you ask God to use you, you can't choose how he uses you. He had to show that moment, which was a moment of humiliation for me. But he was like, I have a win coming the next year. But they need to see this first.
Yeah, like Black culture, the side dishes are the main dishes.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, what kind of meat comes after that?
Right.
But like mac and cheese, what kind of vegetables? Like, those are the main event in Black culture. How did you settle on, because I don't even think y'all don't have just plain mac and cheese at your restaurant. Is there a reason?
No, we
Because
do.
everything has just like, but even your regular mac and cheese, I think, has like 4 cheeses in it.
4, give or take.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll give it Trace. But like, how did you settle? You said the barbecues were like the test kitchen for you, but like, how did you settle on like, I can build a whole empire around this one main dish?
I mean, so Culinary yards made me understand spices and just how things pair and how things work. But then it's just like, I don't know. It's like I had a moment where I was just like, wait. So, because when I started playing with the rules, I'm like, wait. So if because a roux is like a cheese sauce, right? Bechamel or whatever. But like, it's like you can take a roux, it's a sauce, so you can add different things to it, and it changes. And I just started playing around with it, you know what I mean? And it was just like, and then I would, like I said, I would just throw it out there and test it out, and it just worked. So, I mean, if I told you that, like, that was like I had a master plan, and I'd be lying to you. Like, it just kind of naturally evolved into what it turned into. And then it was just, we tried a bunch of different things. Some things stuck, some things didn't. But, that's the thing with me. Like, I'm not afraid to do something and fail. Like, I'm not afraid to, like me and Rosie back there was just talking about like the comfort zone. And that's the thing, like a lot of people, they just get caught in this comfort zone and they just feel so safe there that they're scared to step outside of that. But outside of the comfort zone is where the magic happens.
Right.
You just got to be able to try things and not be afraid to try things, and it might work or might not. But if you don't take that shot, you're 100% gonna miss that shot.
Where does that fearlessness come from? Because this is.
I'm from Brooklyn, though. I don't know. I definitely got something to do with where I came from and how I was raised. But I've always been the underdog. I've always been told no more than I've been told yes. And, I've just been through things in my life where it's just, I gotta figure it out. But, a lot of things there was times in my life where it was really like, what do you have to lose other than trying? Like the most they can say is no. Right. And so that's just something that's just stuck with me. Like, I managed Pitbull at a time where I had a white Cuban rapper from down south that was comfortable speaking in Spanish on records when none of that was popping. New York was, like if you wasn't playing on High 97 in New York, if you ain't had something, like none of that was working. Yeah. But I saw something in him that, not like Luke saw it, like, but not many people saw what I saw. Like I'd be moving around with him, like you don't see what I'm seeing.
Yeah. What is it that you saw?
I just I don't even know if it was something that I saw. It was something more that I felt. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I was on the road with him with Luke when we used to be, because Pitt can really rap. Like he just figured out the formula of how to make songs. He just started going that route because he started making more money doing that. But like I used to be with Pitt and we jump off the bus in Maryland or jump off the bus in Virginia and he jumping on the block freestyling with dudes. Like Luke found him because he battled Dragon on a Rough Riders video shoot. So he could really rap. But it's that like seeing something in somebody and then like for instance, it's so many people didn't believe in Pitt, but I saw what it was. And then it's like when I spin the block and I come back around and now all these dudes that didn't believe, and now you believe. Now you see what I'm seeing. Same thing with A$AP Rocky. I remember coming out here going to Stevie J at Live, and I'm like, yo, I got this kid, A$AP Rocky. Yeah. Nobody believed until he showed up on the VMAs with Rihanna. Then it's like, oh, yo, can you get through for my birthday party? You know what I mean? It's just, so I'm just used to psychologically, that's just something with people that like, people don't believe until you show them. Yeah. And so that's when I step out and I'm like, all right, cool. I'm gonna shoot my shot, whether you believe or not. I'm used to people not believing. I'm gonna show you. And so that's kind of where it came from with this.
Can you share just a little bit about that journey? Because some entrepreneurs just like, I need to like transition from this. I don't know how to do it. And there's not a lot of people that share the story of having to close in order to make a different move in their business.
This is a really hard one, truly, because I'm with you on that. And it is difficult for me to talk about things that don't work, but it's about reframing it from failure. Like losses are just lessons. And I think the goal is to learn the lesson as fast as you possibly can. People always say fail fast. And I used to be like, fail fast? I don't want to fail at all. I'm not going to fail at all, right? You have like the ego. But you are failing. You're constantly failing. You're constantly making mistakes. You're constantly experiencing losses and lessons. And I wish I knew how to do that quicker, because I've actually opened and closed a bunch of different stuff, because I think true entrepreneurs are not risk averse. We love risks. We are like, throw me out of the plane and I'll build a parachute on the way down. Like that is our energy.
As a joy and pleasure.
Yes. You're like, oh, set me on fire. Let's do this thing. I got to figure out how to put it out. And so I think that's like a part of our ethos and our culture as entrepreneurs. But I wish I had learned how to do that quicker. So during COVID, I actually closed a couple of units. I kept my flagship open and this new one that I was opening. Very similar to your last guest, I went into my savings account. I sold my Apple stock. I deleted my Roth IRA. I just wanted to keep my business open. I was like, I got to feed my baby. My grandfather used to always say that, feed the baby, feed the baby. And so, I absolutely did that. But it is still hard, because there are moments where you feel like, oh, am I making the right decision? And, you don't want to save your fingernail and lose your hand. And sometimes you do have to do that. Get leaner, pivot, get in the weeds with it and figure out, okay, this is the ugly part of my business I really don't want to look at. But if I don't look at it and I don't dissect it, I'm never going to be stronger. And that's one of those things that I think my husband has taught me a lot. And I've gleaned a lot of kitchen wisdom from him through osmosis, because he's so excellent. He brings so much excellence to everything he does. He never cuts corners. I mean, the reason he's been so successful in basketball all these years, and now coaching and certainly golf and any of the things that he tries to do in life, he is so obsessed and committed to doing the small things to exhaustion and perfection every single day when no one's looking, and then coming back again and doing them tomorrow. He loves that process. I hate that process. I don't want anybody to break me down and build me back up again. I don't want to stand naked in front of anyone and be judged. It's like I have the opposite of body dysmorphia. I always think I look good. Like, it's crazy. But that's what I think risk takers need. It's like, whatever, throw mud at me. I don't care. I look good in mud. And so that's part of the losses and the lessons. It's like this one particular location, I didn't want to let it go because it was so beautiful and it was so elegant and it was so like perfectly appointed and it was in such an incredible location. And I had all of this space where I could not only do the grown thing that we do our organic song and dance, but also to host companies and organizations and philanthropic ventures that I believe in. You know, like you guys, the Center for Black Innovation, UNICEF, Emerge Americas, Trinidad James came and we did something for him. Dwayne Wade Sellers, just constantly doing stuff. Chase Bank, to hold space for folks where I wasn't charging them an arm and a leg, and it was like, but this is your home too. But we actually had a racist person that lived in the building where we were operating out of that would stand outside of our venue and verbally assault our guests with racial slurs because they did not want a Black female-owned business in the building. And, you know, I'm a fighter. It's like I've never kind of like met a fight I didn't like. But this was so exhausting. And I'm not a litigious person. And I just felt like, what am I getting out of this? Like, I'm literally every day, this is taking my personal power. It's taking my energy that I could be pouring into my franchise business or my new meal plan subscription delivery service business, Lunchology, that I purchased from a friend, or my new, comfort food menu, Grown Southern, that I built with Chef Richard Ingraham and Soleil Rodriguez. Like, there's so many great things I have going on in my life. Fighting this racist motherfucker is just not what it's gonna be for me.
How did you learn to navigate all of those relationships? Because that's, if you don't grow up in it at some point, whether it's corporate experience, getting it wrong to getting it right, that you learn how to navigate relationships, period. But then when you have so many high level relationships that are all maybe wanting different things from you as a leader, like, how are you navigating that?
It's a learning process. I think that it's born out of a fearlessness, though. That, remember, I'm the kid, as I told the story, that I was homeless. I have a fearlessness and I have a deep love for Black people in our community. I want to see our communities thrive and prosper. That leads me to have this almost ferociousness in how I go about it. And I had no at the door. So the worst you can tell me is no. I helped grow an organization to scale in size. I've seen it happen before. And being in Atlanta's kind of like a small town wrapped around tall buildings where you can still touch the mayor if you need to. You can still see a CEO of a Fortune 50 or a Fortune 10 company.
Miami's like that, yeah.
That's what I mean, though. You can still touch and feel those spaces. And we may take that for granted. In the same way that we may take for granted that we used to have, any number of civil rights leaders just walking the streets. But then you've got corporate superheroes that are on the cover of Forbes and Inc. magazine and everything else just walking the streets. And Atlanta being the kind of cool place where, I can go from our mayor, Andre Dickens, to Andre 3000, to civil rights icon, Ambassador Andrew Young in one grocery store. It's that kind of like Southern charm, that kind of Southern relationship, that slowed down where I can look you in the eye, and you can be nice to people for no economic reason. Makes relationship building very easy in the South. But also it's a learned practice. This is not where every time I swung the bat, I hit a home run. There are a lot of swings that nobody hears about where I struck out terribly. And you learn from that. And so trust that it's over 15 years of trial and error, of getting a lot of it wrong, but then also saying that it's for a greater purpose that I'm doing it. It's not about me. Every time I go to bat, it's not about me getting a home run or actually, ratcheting up my stats. Every time I win at the plate, there are 100 people behind me that are going to benefit from me swinging at that ball. And when I swing at it, giving it every single thing that I got.
What about like startups, right? But in particular, diverse startups, because I think oftentimes people feel like D&I is only the big corporation that has mostly white employees, right? But diverse companies also get diversity wrong too. So can you chat a little bit about what you have seen and what they can do to kind of turn course?
Yeah. So I think the thing that we have to remember is that we all own it. So equity belongs to all of us. And in us all owning it, the second layer to that to keep in mind is that because we all have our own piece in it, you are kind of always in a bit of a situation with trying to figure out how you bring it to life. Mm-hmm. Now, when you get to an organization, startup especially, there's got to be a point where you realize, ooh, I'm not that great at this. Mm-hmm. It could be perhaps you have a very, ethnically, racially diverse organization, but is anybody there perhaps, talking about what it looks like to work in this organization with a disability? Mm-hmm. Have we considered what it might look like to work cross-culturally from a, interacting with folks who perhaps speak different languages? And so there has to always be this awareness that like you have room to do better. Mm-hmm. And a willingness to lean into what doing better looks like, which again, the same thing kind of applies as with a large organization because these are individual muscles. Feedback. Can I tell you in a responsible way, here is an opportunity for you to grow. Here is what I recommend you consider. Are you able to take that and say, okay, let me digest that and figure out what the best next steps would be? And then are you also able to tell someone what they need to hear? Mm-hmm. That feedback loop works, whether you're a big company, a small company, et cetera. And then the other thing that you've got to be really good at is apologizing. I talk a lot about apologizing in my work. People assume that apologizing does not have anything to do with equity, mm-hmm. but we've all seen the organizations apologize really badly. Mm-hmm. And so it has to be a thing that we consider as well. So I always teach, my clients an apology at base level is I apologize for, moving forward I will. I apologize for mispronouncing your name. Moving forward, I'll make sure I say it correctly. If we can get those in our bones, if we can just get that, it's going to shift the way we have conversation, and it'll create an environment where the conversation is necessary to us being able to create inclusion and equity in our communities, in our families, in our work, in our whatever space you live in. You own it. It's yours. And I've got to be good at giving and receiving feedback in whatever that terrain is so that I can bring it to life. Mm-hmm.
How does someone get good at receiving feedback?
Oof. You practice. You practice. I also think that you have to know how to push back when you need to. So for receiving feedback, I speak for a living. I talk to all kinds of folks, and what happens to me very often is I get off stage and people will go, "Oh my gosh, that was so great. I wish you had talked about." And I'm like, I can't take the feedback right now. Mm-hmm. Like I get off stage and my first thought is, oh my gosh, why didn't I cover? Why didn't I say that I meant to? I have that moment. So I'm beating myself up in this moment. So I can't right then take someone else's feedback. So I have a habit of saying, I really appreciate that you want to give me this feedback and it's super important to me. Can you give me about 15 minutes so we can talk about it? You can do that in your regular life. That makes it a lot easier for you to take the feedback when you're ready, because sometimes what happens with feedback is we get it and we're just like caught off guard. So you can set that kind of mechanism up, and it works the other way too when you're giving. So when I have feedback to give, I'm in a new relationship, so new-ish. One of the things I often do is I have to give him feedback, right? Yeah. And so what I like to do is say, is it a good time for me to give you some feedback? Because if you've just had a really crappy day, or you've been on the road for 5 hours, or you haven't eaten yet, it's probably not a good time. So I try to make sure I create the invitation for him to say, no, it's not a good time. Can we talk about it tomorrow? And I get good with being able to set that aside. Other than that, it's just like the practice of getting it, feeling really icky and working through it. But you do get a say on when works for you, because we're not always at our best, and we want to make sure when we're getting feedback, we're in the best position to be able to hear it.
No, I love that. So when do you need it, or do you need some time before you are able to receive it?
Yes.
Almost kind of like softening the blow a little bit, or not really?
Or making it so that the blow comes at a time when you're able to receive it.
Okay. And so when we're thinking about people, organizations that build programs,
Yeah.
right? Especially in support of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, there was like a large number of companies that closed or just did not work.
Yeah.
What's the factor within that?
That's a great question. I had many nights reflecting on this, and I think it really kind of bolstered a lot of my thoughts in ACT, House, ACT as a model, team model. And when you boil it down, everything starts at the human. And oftentimes we look at a founder as a founder first instead of a human first. And humans have like brilliance, talent, skills. And so if you start to look at, we did this diagnosis on those companies and even the ones that didn't make it in our cohorts, the common denominator was team. You had a solo founder with a great idea, but they couldn't pick up enough team members along the way. And if you think about it, if I can actually bring on certain team members that have a particular skill set, then that reduces my need of money in some form or capacity because now they can pick up that work. Because if I'm a solo founder, I'm only trying to raise the money in order to either outsource for a particular skill set that needs to be moved on. And so as we started to diagnose this, and I actually started to reflect, I wrote a post-mortem report of my first startup. And I wrote down 3 things. One was, hey, Dom, like this leadership visionary thing, you got this down. Like there's something here. 2, when it comes to being a facilitator of human potential and taking ideas and moving them across, you can do that. The 3rd one was team, like architects, creatives, and techies. And so having that reflection and then having the experience of, okay, hey, incubators and accelerators, if we actually focus more on team, we can actually get people across the hump. And that's what started the ACT House.
How do you get to a point where you can have clarity around exactly why you fail in the role that you played in it, right? Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't do that, refuse to do that. They're scared to do that and take some sort of ownership to the point where you write it down. Like, these are the 3 reasons why I know it failed, and I played a role in that in some capacity.
In the famous words of Denzel Washington, like, I'm leaving here with something, right? Like, we lost, we failed, right? And when you think about all the energy that you put into it, and sometimes the expectations that you place on yourself, the things that you've told friends, like, we're gonna be $1 million company, like, we're gonna be a big hit. It's tough to have the weight of those quote unquote statements and promises you put out there, like, on yourself. And so what happens is that there's this reverse kind of element of pride, where it's not that like you're haughty and boastful, like prideful in that way. You're just shamed, right? You feel the shame of it. And so for me, I was like, well, I felt that shame, and writing was a way to process it, right? And so I don't think I went and said, hey, let me write a post-mortem report, like, for what I've done. I didn't know that's what I actually did. I knew I needed to process the experience of the failed startup. And I think the piece that I've always come to learn is that, look, if you can have enough humility, and my definition of it is being willing to admit, being confident and willing to admit what you don't know and what you know. And having that perspective for me has been transformative, and just always being willing to exploit my own ignorance.